am going to go ahead and take that as a note that we may go ahead and proceed. I am now going ahead and activating the recording of today's session. Everyone, we are now live in the recording, and we may now proceed.
Thank you, Landon. Good morning to everyone. I call the meeting to order. Let us open for a brief time of reflection. Please bow your head. Thank you. We have the quorum, and counting Zachary, we have everybody on online. Are there any introductions that need to be made this morning? If not, can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Paul, can you give us a safety briefing?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman. In the abundance of safety, we have asked staff and JEA employees to attend the meeting remotely, and the board, as required, is present in the meeting room. We will, in the event of any type of emergency in the physical location, the Director of Security, Brandon Edwards, is there, so give him your full control and attention should an event occur. We at JEA will continue to follow all health and safety and operating COVID-19 protocols for the foreseeable future and encourage all to follow CDC recommendations and guidelines. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. And I really applaud your decision to ask the employees to come in virtually. It makes it much more comfortable for us as members not to be in a crowded room, and it ensures we'll continue to get a quorum. But that was a great idea. Jody, can you brief us on the Sunshine Law?
Yes, sir. And as you noted, you're present in the room, and the governor has not extended the order to allow local government boards and commissions to meet virtually, and we were hoping that would occur, but it hasn't. So we have quorum present in the room to be able to conduct this JEA board meeting. It's been duly noticed as a hybrid meeting in which there's members there present in the room, and then the folks out here virtually attending the meeting. It's been properly noticed as a hybrid virtual meeting for today's meeting. Quorum present, minutes will be taken and published, and so we're in good order to proceed with the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman DeFore, are you connected yet?
I am. I'm sorry. Apparently, Fidelity does not like WebEx, so I apologize for being a little late. It's good to see everybody.
Thank
remotely.
You for being here.
Just a quick update. I'm working with Kurt Wilson on a couple of matters that are involved at JEA. One is with what's been in the process of being addressed at the state level with the water runoff and reuse of it. And after depending on how you vote today on that matter, I'm prepared to file a resolution at city council level supporting your actions in regard to that. And the other one is there's some union contracts I know that we're dealing with in terms of the possibility of early retirement. And I know there's a substitution bill in the council as we speak that it will address the JEA and carving the JEA out. That's all I've got. Thank you. And I'm open for any questions if you have any. Questions
of Councilman DeFore? Thank you, Randy. We appreciate all you do for us. Brandon, do we have any comments from the public?
I do not, but I will make one last call if we have any comments from the public. If you have joined us via the WebEx technology, you can look in the participant window. You will see an icon by your name that looks like a hand. If you click that icon, it will activate indicating to me that you would like to be recognized to speak for public comment. As we do have call-in users today, if you would like to speak in today's meeting and be recognized, the first action would be *3 on your telephone, which will raise your hand. And then by pressing *6, this will unmute your line. If either of those two options are unable to work properly for you, you may type in the chat window within the WebEx technology to indicate that you'd like to go ahead and proceed or have comments. And we'll go ahead and look for your indication now. Mr. Chair, I do not see any comments in today's meeting nor raised hands in the WebEx technology.
Thank you. Then we'll proceed with the meeting. Paul McElroy, could you give us some employee recognition, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, because I'm not present in the room, I'm not sure if there's anybody there from the public that wanted to speak or if there's any speaker cards. I'm assuming there are none, but just to check that box.
I don't see any hands.
Okay, thank you,
We're all
sir.
clear. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it is with great pleasure I seek a resolution from the board today honoring Ms. Jerry Boyce McKenzie, Ms. Vicki Cavey, Bruce Dugan, and Ms. Angelina Hires. And so if I may, I'll run through that resolution. That whereas after many dedicated, successful years of public service and community leadership, Jerry Boyce McKenzie, Vicki Cavey, Bruce Dugan, and Angelina Hires were enjoying active and rewarding retirement. Whereas these exceptional public servants, extraordinary retired JEA leaders saw the need and heard the calling to help JEA, its new board, in our community to reestablish JEA as a preeminent public power, municipal water and wastewater enterprise. Whereas these talented, experienced, and ethical servant leaders possess the unique skills and knowledge as well as the ability to function as and within high-performing teams. Whereas these individuals place their personal lives, commitments, and responsibilities on hold to assist setting JEA on the path to preeminence. Whereas as their 6 months engagement draws to an end, JEA has recovered its exceptional standing within the utility industry, financial community, city council, and our community. Whereas it is noted that these leaders were fully supported by the extraordinary JEA workforce, including its strong interim senior leadership team and the bargaining unit leadership. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Directors of JEA that it hereby expresses its great appreciation and deep gratitude to Jerry Boyce McKenzie, Vicki Cavey, Bruce Dugan, and Angelina Hires for their outstanding service and contribution towards placing JEA on the path to regaining its excellent standing in the utility industry and within our community. Hopefully unanimously adopted this 17th day of November 2020.
Thank you, Paul. Can we have a motion to that effect?
I move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to, reiterate Paul's point is, the exceptional service that these individuals provided for this community, for the JEA, and for us as board members was incredible. So big shout out to these individuals, and thank you.
It is not ordinary for people to come out of retirement when the ox is in the ditch, and they did. So we'll always be grateful for them and love them and what they did.
Well, and I think they came back to work with Paul. So I think we probably, at some point, Paul, in classic fashion, you're being humble and you haven't included yourself in this resolution. But if it's possible to either add Paul in this resolution or at a future resolution, I think that's appropriate.
Let's do a future resolution for Paul. I don't want him to think he's off the hook yet.
Okay, good. Duly noted.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you all so much. That's great. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would note for the record there that we had one additional person come back. He joined us from employment, but he still serves in an interim role in terms of Brian Roche as Chief Financial Officer. So Brian is included to some extent in this group, but he will continue on as the rest of us ultimately move back into retirement. I want to introduce Ms. Sheila Presley, and Sheila is a senior executive with JEA in our consumer or customer relations area. Has had an outstanding 18-year career, and as of yesterday, working with Bruce Dugan and in full communication with Jay Stowe, we moved Sheila as of the end of the month to become Chief Customer Officer, replacing Bruce when he returns to retirement. So Sheila, congratulations to her, and she's going to present to the board and really the public an award that we received from FMEA, which is Florida Municipal Electric Association. These are all the municipal electric utilities within the state of Florida. It's our trade association. And if you recall, just 7 months ago, we were not in good standing. We had exited this community and rather abruptly and mean-spiritedly, and to come full circle at this point in time, be recognized by their board with this outstanding award, I think is terrific and shows great confidence in the board and the workforce. So Sheila, I'll turn it over to you, and you can explain this award. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. I'm elated to share that the Florida Municipal Electric Association recently recognized JEA and its employees with a Building Strong Community Award for offering our community extra services and programs beyond those normally supplied. Winners were selected for community programs that included environmental improvement, community education, public safety, charitable donations and sponsorships, and other special services. Our employees volunteered and stood the test this year despite the pandemic, and we reached 82% of our overall corporate goal. Those virtual activities afford us the ability to continue to serve the community while social distancing and remaining safe. I'll highlight just a few of the activities that we performed for the community this year. I'll start with the Ambassador Program, serving the community through 7,000 hours of service. The JEA Theater at the Mosh, exposing 50,000 students and adults to how we produce electricity. The JEA Education Program. 22,000 teachers were provided educational materials and programs free of charge. Since 1997, JEA employees have contributed $8 million to the United Way of Northeast Florida. And one of our most popular activities is the Arbitrary Giveaway, in which 2,500 members of our community attended. Congratulations to JEA, and congratulations to our employees for serving the community well.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sheila.
And that concludes employee recognition, Mr. Chairman. And if you'd like, I'll roll right into the Managing Director's report.
Can we just pause for a moment and say, express our gratitude to the rank and file? Nobody has been distracted in the rank and file over the past year. We're still committed to our community, and I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll brief report here from my perspective. You'll see in the information packet, and we'll give a summary report that the financial performance of the utility continues to be strong, and our outlook is equally strong. Our operations are performing well, and we have improvement plans in place where we might be slightly below our objectives. We received this morning, actually not directly, but a communication from the Florida League of Cities. The Florida League of Cities has essentially produced a document, a policy statement, which aligns very well with our resolution. We'll be seeking approval with respect to wastewater effluent. And so we've got the full force of the League of Cities, the representative of all the cities in the state of Florida, to go cautiously. That the goal of zero discharge is an admirable goal, aspirational goal, but does have significant economic consequences, and timelines need to be adjusted and circumstances need to be taken into effect. I think as we turn the page here, a couple of things to keep an eye out for. We do have, and 3 or 4 things we accomplished in the last month. We did put out a request for qualifications for the redevelopment of the St. Johns River Power Park land that's due back in late January. It'll take sort of staff probably a month or 6 weeks to analyze all of that information and come back to the board for discussion and direction. We do have out a third-party review of board governance, probably the first calendar quarter in terms of response and reporting out an overview of and benchmarking of governance of the utility. Third-party review of our procurement policy and procedures and practices. That was worked out with the council, and the report's due in the next couple of weeks. It'll be fully evaluated and put up in action items probably through the full calendar 2021 to align our procurement with best practices in the industry, ensuring transparency and fair procurement and award granting. And then finally, we've got a third-party review of Plant Vogel's budgeted cost and schedule. And I think this will be helpful for the board and for the management team to sort of have a third-party view of this major project and the milestones ahead. And that should be awarded shortly. And I would look to, again, the early first quarter, January-ish timeframe to have the results. Finally, I want to thank you, the board, for the opportunity to work with you and the great JEA team and our community. It's been an honor being part of the team working to restore JEA to preeminence. I truly believe there is a bright future in front of JEA, and I think you have with you on the phone today in this meeting today a bright new leader in Jay Stowe, and I look forward to continuing to work with him on the transition and wish everybody the best. I'm still around, but this will be essentially, I guess, my last board meeting in this chair. And tell you it's been an honor to serve our community, and thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And you know how we feel as a board about you and all you've done. And we'll have a special time where we really take the time to appropriately honor you and thank you.
Appreciate it.
Jay Stowe, are you on the line?
I am indeed. And welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I think my first order of business really is to say thank you to the board for allowing me the opportunity to represent the JEA employees and contractors that keep Jacksonville running every day. I'm already honored to be associated with them, so thank you for that. But I also think there's other groups that I ought to thank today. The employees and contractors that have continued to meet the area's needs over what is, I still look for the right word, but I'll call it a tumultuous couple of years. They kept on going and keeping things going, and I appreciate that. you all, the board, have taken the lead and taken steps over the last several months to provide stability and direction for the organization. So thank you for that. To the City Council and other leaders of Jacksonville, they've taken action to support JEA and the key economic development partner that we are as part of the community. And to the community itself, I think this is forward-looking. Thank you for the chance for us to regain your confidence. So thank you for that. And last but not certainly least, you just said this, but to Paul McElroy, the interim team, and those folks that he brought back with him to support. And it doesn't flow off of my tongue the way it does with the chair, but ox out of the ditch is a good analogy, and I appreciate that the ox is out of the ditch now. So I think we should be aware of our past mistakes so that we don't repeat them, but we also need to stop wallowing in the past, and I think it is time for us to move forward. I start officially in 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks ago whenever you all selected me, and we're going to be focused in the future on learning from the past, but we'll be squarely focused on the future. And I think the most important message today is really one to the employees. You've been through a lot in the last couple of years, and I think I can't really imagine it, but I think it has been hard for you. And we're going to keep making JEA better by treating each other with courtesy and respect and doing what's best for our customers every day, while we still kind of enjoy each other and have fun while we're doing it. But we need to do this safely. Times of transition sometimes are times when we all can lose a little bit of track of what's going on, and I encourage you to pay attention because the work that we do every day really is dangerous. The work that you do every day is dangerous, and I hope that you can stay safe. My focus for the next little bit, which is an undefined time, but over the next little bit of time, is to listen to the community, listen to the employees, the staff, the board, and then to stay focused on the strategic area focuses that you all have developed: earning customer loyalty, delivering business excellence, and building an unbeatable team. Two of those are directly related and focused on people, customers and employees, the team. But I think the third one really is focused on people too. It's developing processes and procedures in the way we do business, taking care of assets and dollars. But it's also becoming easier to do business with. And so we'll focus on those areas, spending time listening to people over the next few months. We will work to develop a senior team to move interim off of titles, get the right people in the right seats. But the staff will keep doing operational things that need to be done. We'll be thoughtful and deliberate with decisions as we move forward. Items that require decisive action we can address quickly, but in large part we'll be deliberate and open and transparent, both with our staff and the community as we move forward. I've already started meeting with lots of people. While I don't officially start for a couple of weeks, it feels like I started last week. And I've received calls and emails from people inside of Jacksonville, near and far. And the theme I keep on getting is that people from Jacksonville and around the country and the industry want JEA to succeed, want JEA and Jacksonville to thrive and to be the best utility in the country. JEA is foundational to the community. If we do our jobs well, then everyone else can do theirs well. And I think we can make and help support making Jacksonville to become the best city in the country to live, work, and play. I look forward to getting to Jacksonville in a couple of weeks, meeting the employees, meeting the folks in the community. In the meantime, I encourage the employees and staff and contractors stay safe, keep doing what's best for our customers, treat each other with courtesy and respect. And I am honored to be a part of this team and look forward to moving forward and reiterate the thanks to Paul and his team as we move forward.
Thank you, Jay.
I'm happy to answer any questions. This is a lot easier than the last time when I had to answer interview questions, but I'm happy to answer anything you might have.
No, sir. We appreciate you hitting the ground running, especially given the salary that you're getting for the next 2 weeks. We appreciate your full-time engagement. It's important, and we are delighted to have you and excited to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If we can, we'll move to the consent agenda. There are 5 items on the consent agenda, 2 minutes of the October 27th and November 2nd meetings, which require approval, as well as some other informational items. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Brian and Bruce, can we go to the financial report and operations report?
Yes, Chairman Baker. Good morning, everybody. And we'll go through this financial report in 3 or 4 minutes. We have a presentation following on the 5-year plan that incorporates a lot of things. We're in the first month of the year. Turn the slide for me, please, Landon. But one slide we do definitely want to spend a couple of minutes on is the next one, the safety slide. I was great to hear our incoming CEO talk about the importance of safety, and then also Board Member Lanahan talking about the rank and file. The staff has done a wonderful job operating the utility, being resilient, and nothing shows them more than this. You look at the benchmark in the black line. The history is a 1.15 recordable incident rate. That's about 30 OSHA recordables a year. Last year in FY20, during tough times, the folks in the field, we have over 1,200 people in the field every day in industrial grade jobs out on the roads, and the recordable incident rate was 0.81, which is a record. I think one time in the last 20 years they've even been in that range. Half as many injuries, OSHA recordables as the benchmark that JEA's been at most years. And this year coming out of the box with 1 recordable in the month. Now, of course, every injury is one too many, and we focus on having 0 injuries as we go forward. Next slide, please. We'll just go. This is 1 month. The month of October had mild weather in both temperature and a lot of rain. So both the electric sales and the water sales were down. Electric 2.7, water the next slide. Turn for me, please, Lennon. 7.7%. Nothing to get alarmed about. Some months of the year are different, and the seasonal of the utility business. So we'll monitor this probably at the end of the quarter. So in the January presentation, we'll have 3 months in, we'll have better numbers on that. Next slide.
Wait a second, Brian. We were down 23%.
One sheet financial forecast.
Wait a second, Brian. Yeah, we were down 23% in net electric revenues.
Go back, please.
From year over year. I'm on page 15.
I'm not sure if I'm catching that. Is it on the one on the slide?
It's on page 15 of the,
15 of the monthlies or 15?
15 on the month, page 15.
Like the annual financial report.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have that in front of me, but I think what that is, Mr. Stein, is JEA utilizes rate stabilization funds. So I believe if we go to 2 more slides, might show it. I believe you're talking about electric. Or this water one's fine. There's an avenue that $34 million is a prior year budget amount. And sometimes, maybe go back 1 more in electric. I think, Mr. Stein, you're talking electric?
Yeah.
I believe that there was rate stabilization money from prior year revenues that was put in a rate stabilization, brought in, treated like revenues for GAAP purposes. There was really money that was collected from prior years, placed in the funds as a revenue in FY20, and then used to pay down debt. If you look at the bottom in the gray, there was debt management rate stabilization, $30 million.
Yep,
I believe that's the case. And Joe's on the phone if you want to confirm that.
This is Joe Arfano, Brian. That's correct.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Stein, I missed that.
Yeah, I'm Bobby. Don't call me Mr. Stein.
Okay, I'll do that. You correct me 3 times forever. I'll do that now, Bobby. Thank you. Okay. And this, there are a couple items like that with our, we really have 3 different ways to present data. We presented a GAAP, we presented a debt service coverage, cash basis, and also a budget basis. So sometimes we're trying to show in these slides the difference between that where it's showing the prior year revenues. I think the main item to look on this is at the bottom and the right. It shows that $273 million is coming in through R&R and OCO for the capital fund this year. And the capital and electric is expected to be $197 million. So that extra $75 million is going to be used to early debt retirement in this year. So that's a good story, getting prepped for future years. Next slide, please. The water wastewater, let's go look at those same two numbers. The income and current year revenues for capital is $255 million. Still very, very strong. Depreciation is about $170 million, $160 million water wastewater. So, certainly significantly higher than depreciation. But the capital expenditures in water wastewater the next 3 years are increasing. So 298, if the 298 does come to fruition, JEA will use the revolving credit facility for about $40 million, then issue long-term debt next year to help fund the growing capital program in water sewer. But we'll manage and report on this as the year goes through. Next slide. I think this one we'll just kind of wait to the 5-year plan. The metrics the first month forecast to be great and in target, and we'll look at that in our 5-year plan presentation in 20 or 30 minutes, more detail. Next slide. Want to highlight something at the bottom there. The $3.154 billion of current outstanding debt throughout all three systems. That's $103 million lower than it was 12 months ago. And we expect that to be an additional $325 million lower this time next year. And we'll go through some of that in the 5-year plan. But that's the number we'll watch this year on this great story that did peak up to almost $6.4 billion 10 years ago. And it will be down to about $2.8 billion at the end of this fiscal year, or October 1st next year, actually. Next slide. And just want to touch on the rates. JEA is the median or right below the median of our peer utilities in Florida, the Big Ten municipal and IOUs. JEA has been stable for 10 years now in the electric system in 2 months. There are 2 announcements of IOUs announced a rate increase in January on the left. So JEA is looking to stay stable while the ones continue to grow on the left. Next slide. Same thing on water wastewater. The rates have been stable in water wastewater for 8 years. I like to call it moving to the left. If you look back 10, 12 years ago and looking 5, 6, the JEA keeps on moving left to this graph. One addition this month, we have added Miami-Dade back on. Has not been on since, I think, 2012. Miami-Dade went through a multi-billion-dollar, still ongoing consent decree on environmental programs. And the rates were very low a few years ago. So it was kind of it just really was kind of not in line with everybody else. So we added back on, and JEA plans to stay stable for a few more years here. I'd like to turn it over to Bruce Dugan on the customer.
Yeah, but before you get there, Paul.
All right, go ahead and go to the next slide there.
Wait a second. Before you get there, one of the thoughts that Paul and I talked about last week was the irrigation rates, on water usage. Paul, why don't you give your thoughts there?
Well, thank you, Bobby. Yes, I think in terms of when we look forward in some of the water supply presentation later on, we'll see that we're going to have to move into alternative water sources, which is extraordinarily expensive. But we use about half of our potable water. Half of the water we withdraw from the aquifer is used in irrigation. And much of that irrigation is wasteful in nature. You'll probably see in one of the presentations about the 2010 timeframe, we went through a series of pricing adjustments, which did a price accordingly. It was a step-up rate on irrigation use. So it was really a conservation rate. So the more you used on irrigation, the more you paid. And we have fallen behind the surrounding communities in that pricing, and thus, I think, encouraging or at least discouraging conservation. And there are also some other areas in terms of our commercial rates for water usage, and these are for large water users, that we seem to be attracting people in because we are discounting very large volumes of water in our commercial rate, our 10-inch meter. And so I believe that there should be some action, at least my recommendation would be some action fairly shortly on both of those matters to help encourage conservation and efficient use of water for irrigation, and to discourage and massive amounts of water withdrawn for certain commercial applications, et cetera. So that's a conversation we have, Bobby. Thank you.
Yeah, I just suggest to Mr. Chairman and Jay to look at this, because I think it's something important we got to get on.
Thank you for bringing that up, Bobby. It's a great idea. Bruce?
Thank you, Chair Baker. Good morning. Good morning, board members. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We're going to spend some time this morning talking about customer satisfaction. But before we get into that in-depth look at our customer satisfaction, I wanted to just point out here on the net write-offs, bad debt expense. You notice there the total for FY 2020. And then as you go across that chart, you see for FY 2021, our first month, you see a negative number. I know you understand what that is. We had a large recovery that was bigger than the amount of money that went into write-offs this month, but there's a twofold part of that. The recovery is one part. The other part is that when we suspended disconnects for our customers as a response to the COVID crisis and the economic shutdown, that suspended the process that puts money into write-off. So for the next approximately 3 months, 2 to 3 months, you're going to see numbers that are unusually low on the write-offs because dollars simply didn't go there, unless someone closed their own account because we didn't disconnect anyone for non-pay. So these will look a little odd. And then following that period of low numbers, you'll see some bigger than average numbers as we see those suspensions in our processes catch up. So just a note for the economics there. I do want to share a couple other economic numbers with you that are not on the chart. We do have a couple of good news pieces. One is that the exposure on pay arrangements decreased about 400,000. We currently run about 3.2 million in payment arrangements, and 91%, the rate right now is 91% of those pay arrangements are being honored by customers. Very good news. There is one negative, just a slight negative, that the accounts receivable over 90 days did increase fairly substantially this month. So we are seeing some impacts from COVID. It went from 1.29% to 2.28%, or roughly just under 2 million to just under 3 million. So that's it's not a good sign, but we'll continue to watch that, and you'll see this in the net write-offs as we go forward. We'll also be able to report any of these other numbers that you find interesting or compelling as we kind of monitor the impacts of COVID as we go forward. All right, let's move to the next slide, to the next presentation, really. Can move forward. Thank you, Jerry. All right, and you can move on to the next slide. One of the 3 areas of strategic focus that was mentioned this morning, earning customer loyalty, is one that we've been committed to for some time now. We're committed to meeting our customers' needs, then their expectations, then finally to exceed those expectations, even to delight our customers and earn their loyalty. You can go to the next slide. The voice of the customer defines value. They get to define it. Our job is to listen and deliver. We never stop working on any level of service. And those levels of service are depicted in this model, from the basics all the way to things like assisting customers with an electric vehicle purchase. So as we move up this triangle, you can see that we've been working hard to move to the area of customer loyalty. And right now, we've kind of been working diligently between the caring and trusted advisor, but every single level continues to occupy our attention. Go to the next slide. So we've chosen to use J.D. Power to measure customer satisfaction for us to be able to gauge and know more about the voice of the customer. So the main drivers are shown on this model, and they're used frequently by staff to help us focus on what customers tell us are important to them. J.D. Power weights, developed statistically, help provide perspective on the relative import of those components of each driver. In other words, this gives us some math behind customer perceptions. Go to the next slide. So since choosing J.D. Power, our scores have continued to, and you can go to the next slide. This is just a continued breakdown of J.D. Power. Here, this slide, you can see that our scores have continued to trend upward, a slight decrease on the residential side in 2020. But these numbers for 2020 were really collected from September of 19 until early August of 2020. Also, there's always a lag in our customers' perceptions on the things that we're doing. So essentially most, if not all, of the board's actions have not shown up in our J.D. Power results as of yet. So looking at these, we trend upward, but our peers have been able to trend upward more quickly. Go to the next slide. That's true both in the overall score and in each of the drivers as depicted in this year-over-year graph for each of those drivers. Go to the next one. In fact, if you look at this one, this is an interesting one because in corporate citizenship and corporate citizenship and communications, JEA's performance has actually crossed and is now below industry average. And so that's an important indicator that those two, especially communications and corporate citizenship, need some improvement. And there is an explanation for this. Go to the next slide. We are currently in the top of the third quartile for residential. And you go to the next slide. Top of the second quartile for business, where we have been in the past in the top quartile. So we've got some ground to make up. Next slide, please. All right, I wanted to show this slide because this one shows some metrics that are not affected by customer perception. However, we know from J.D. Power that customers who are in these groups tend to rate us higher. So if our fundamental service levels, if we are continuing to outperform the industry average on important metrics, important features to our customers, things that generally generate good performance ratings, why are we scoring lower than we have in the past? If you go to the next slide, this is the single biggest difference between JEA's performance today with customer perception and satisfaction compared to the industry average and, of course, the industry leaders. And it's remarkable how much difference there is. If you look at this graph on the red line with the negative media recall, you have to go all the way back to 2011. And Paul alluded to some of the pricing changes, which were substantial. And as could be expected, when you raise rates fairly rapidly, you get some negative perception. We haven't seen anything like that until the last year. And I think everyone knows what media stories have been causing this. So whereas our score for negative recall is 52%, the industry average is 22%, and the industry leaders is much better. You can look at that graph, and this is, again, the single biggest issue with our customer satisfaction at this point, which is good news in one sense, in that we've turned the corner, the media stories will follow, and we can do some things to make our scores go up even further. So go to the next slide. We're going to talk about some initiatives that we've launched and some that we're continuing to work on. Go to the next slide. The customer experience team is well-rounded. We've got a team leader over each of these areas, someone who can lead each of these teams to make improvements for the customer experience and things that can move us up that value proposition model that we talked about earlier. Next slide. The way that we choose what we're going to do is based on the voice of the customer. What customers tell us is important to them is important for us to improve. And so when we look at what our customers have scored us in the past, when we look at what customers score other utilities in the same space, similar utilities, we know what is possible and we know where we are. The difference is the opportunity index that we use. Go to the next slide. This is a list of some initiatives that we've already begun. We've also looked here and on the chart. It shows you some of the negative numbers or the opportunity. We're lower in those areas than some of the industry leaders. Some of the things that we did in the last couple of years, leaving some of the corporate communications that really have proven to be useful to customers, telling them how they can save energy, how they can save water, money, how they can get better value out of their JEA products. Those things we kind of left to the side. So we have recommitted and realigned, and we're looking forward to having additional customer satisfaction number increases based on some of the things that you see in this list and the opportunity index indicated at the right. Go to the next slide. Every single area in the customer experience is working on improvements. We are working in conjunction with every other area of the company, whether it's electric, water, environmental, human resources. Every single area of the company is committed to customer satisfaction and earning customer loyalty. And if you go to the next slide, next couple of slides, each area of the customer experience team has specific items that they're working on. Stop here. This communications campaign that I mentioned earlier, that we had kind of abandoned some of the communications that our customers want and expect. We have been working hard, and we expect in early January to launch a pretty exciting communication campaign that looks at and provides information to our customers in ways that they can consume it, easily find it, that they can understand it, and it doesn't consume a lot of their time. So we're looking forward to launching this in January. I think you're going to be pleased with the way this looks, and I think it's going to provide our customers with things that they want and need. Go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to just introduce a couple of slides here to your, at least explain what they're in your deck for so that you can look at these at your leisure. If you go to the next slide. This is on the residential side, the top 5 gaps between our performance and what we believe is reasonable or that other utilities have achieved. So you can look at this and you see the impact number there that shows the number of, or the score that we could achieve if we could maybe correct where we are with this. The total monthly cost of electric service is obviously is one that we would want to look at. However, that one may be not the one that we need to work on, but maybe rather fairness of pricing. So if you go through the next few slides, I'll explain why that's true. Just go on through till you see the orange header. That will be the business, same kinds of slides, and you can look at these at your leisure. This is the business side, same sort of concept. Look at these when you get a chance. I want to go to the next set of slides so you know what they are. They are looking at the correlation between the different elements in the JDP drivers, because we may not be able to move the price of our products because we achieve or we set our prices the lowest level that's prudent, but we can increase the value. And so there are some things, for example, fairness of pricing. We can work on fairness of pricing, and that can impact the responses we get for the actual cost of the bill. So we look at, the staff looks at the correlation between the relationships between all these drivers and the elements that make up the drivers, because this is, statistically speaking, is a really good and valid model. In fact, we took it apart when we first started with JD Power. It was a rather lengthy and in-depth look, but we took several weeks to take the model apart, ensure its validity so that we knew that we were really achieving what our customers expected. Go to the next slide. One last thing I want to leave you with, next slide, is the last 2 slides are demographics in Jacksonville. And I think it's important that we note, when you look at this second block here, the income of households, 21% of our customers make less than $25,000 a year. But more importantly, and what is not depicted on this chart, is the United Way of Northeast Florida, United Way across the country, uses a term called ALICE, Asset Limited Income, and basically means that the people in that group are living paycheck to paycheck even though they're employed. And so that number is closer to 37 to 40% of JEA's customers are in that living paycheck to paycheck mean. So it's really important that we keep that in consideration as we develop solutions for our customers to help them save on their electric, water, and wastewater bills. And so it's the, I just got a note, it's the asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So up to 40% of our customers are in that boat. Really speaks to how we need to develop solutions for our customers, help them to understand how they can use our products and get the most value out of those products. And so I wanted to leave that with you and give you those pieces of information that you can look at your leisure. But rest assured, staff is looking very carefully and deeply and customer satisfaction and how we can improve that both through communication, corporate citizenship, and every other part of the JDP drivers. So with that, I'll stop and see if there's any questions before we move on.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, as you know, I am passionate about our customer service rankings, and I've worked with J.D. Power in the past, and much like rating agencies, they're very quick. These ratings are very quick to go down and very slow to be pulled back up. And I want to just make sure that the rank and file understands that I don't believe our customer satisfaction scores are indicative of their efforts and their activities. And I say that because I've worked with teams in the past who have had, for reasons out of their control, very bad scores. And these aren't horrible, but they're not what we're used to. And the teams have taken them so personally. And I just want to say to the rank and file, again, I don't believe these previous scores have been indicative of what your works have been. I also want to say how excited I am, Bruce, that you're beginning to create and control our message out to our community, because we don't have to look far for good news. The good news stories are there. This is not going to be like going to buy something. I won't pick on car dealers who, when you walk out, they say, give me a 5 when you get a phone call, on my ratings. We're not playing any games to get back to our high levels of customer satisfaction. It will take time, it will take effort, but I just, again, I might sound like a broken record today. I want to thank the rank and file for their efforts and their activities to give us the good news to be able to share in the community.
I'll add something, Mr. Chairman, and one of the things we're doing in our companies is, going to best-in-class competitors and get lessons learned and spend 5 or 10 minutes, whether it's customer service or what they're doing that we're not doing, and getting the CEO make a presentation is, take one competitor at a time, whether it's water, sewer, electrical, what can be done, what are good competitors doing. And the good thing that we have here is our competitors aren't in our market. So my suggestion to Jay and to you, Mr. Chairman, is let's get Jay to make a presentation of our competitors and what are they doing in these areas that we can get better at.
Okay, Bobby, I think that's a great idea. And Paul went to great lengths with me to explain how valid he thought the J.D. Power measures were. We're not just, teaching to the test. We have picked the right thing that is just what you said. But talking to real live people is super important, and I think it's a great idea. But I love what Bruce has told us. It's clear to me that we're getting in the weeds, we're going after it, and we're going to get it done. And it may take, I'm sure it already has taken longer than what we would like, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen for all the right reasons. And thank both of you all for your comment.
There was another nugget of information in there that wasn't necessarily J.D. Power related, but it's the Alice report, and it may be that Jay and HR take a look at the odds are we have associates who are within that band, so we need to see what we can do for our lower paid associates as well.
Mr. Chair, if I can add too, I know they're not related, but they sort of are. So you have the residential and business. In business, the J.D. Power is pretty encouraging. It's looking good, and just I got it. We want to focus on the residential side, but also let's continue to gain on the momentum we have on the business one, not lose it, but in fact, and continue to improve on it. And there might be, although I don't know what it is now, but maybe some overlap in the good practices that we're doing on the business side that can correlate to the residential to get those ratings up too.
Thank you. Okay, Bruce, do we go back to Brian or for the?
Yes, that concludes my part of the presentation. I do want to just say thank you for the opportunity, the privilege of working with the JEA team again with Paul. and for you, Board, for the community. It's been a privilege and an honor and a joy. Thank you.
And Bruce, we're lucky and blessed to have you come back and appreciate you getting us back on track.
Mr. Chairman. And yes, we go to Brian, Mr. Chairman.
Tom has
Mr. Chair, if
Tom.
I may, one other comment. I really applaud taking control of our own messaging, the communications and the public relations campaign that Bruce outlined. That the biggest driver here is this tone of media recall in 2020. And again, I think we all understand what's driving that. So insofar as great things are happening at the JEA and subsequent positive media stories will indeed follow, I think taking control of our own messaging and being very clear about the great things that are happening and communicating that across our community is essential. So really applaud that work, Bruce. And I guess I would ask, we heard, I think in January we'll be launching some of these things. Maybe at our next board meeting, if we could get just an overview of what some of that messaging will look like. I think that'd be helpful for us to understand and look for and amplify in the community. And again, I just really applaud that taking control of our own messaging and charting our own course around what I believe will be the new trajectory for tone of media recall. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, the 5-year plan?
Next slide, please, Landon. The team over the summer revamped the 5-year plan, financial plan and assumptions. And I say the team, this incorporates entire operations, the capital work, and O&M budget that was done in May through July for FY21, and that feeds into the 5-year plan. It's a condensed 14 pages, probably more condensed than we've probably ever done in the past, and really it becomes a financial component of the annual rate agency presentation. So we'll go through, highlight some important topics, and answer any questions along the way. I think so this one will highlight that for base case purposes, we're saying stable electric sales, 12 million megawatt hours. That's lower than last year's, and we put that out for 5 years. So if you have higher growth, that allows more flexibility for investments, lower rate impacts, but that's just the base case for planning purposes, and we utilize a stable fuel rate on the out years. Water, wastewater, 1.5% increase in unit sales. That's more consistent with the past year, and an additional customer meter growth. Also, a $2.5 billion 5-year capital program, very significant. Maybe in the early 2000s, JEA embarked on larger ones when there's building power plants. But this is mostly R&R and some expansion in the water sewer system. So R&R in both electric system and water and wastewater. No large generation plants in the first 5 years of this decade in the electric side. $425 million in new debt. We'll show a slide. That's really the first new debt in over a decade. Variable debt, we'll have several slides on that. $341 million is unhedged, currently at 0.7%, including the 15% rate itself and the 55 basis points that the banks require on the liquidity support providers. And maybe just roll down to the bottom. These are some principles of public utility rate making. I was going to skip it, but I think a few things broke the board, and Bruce mentioned too. Well, highlight that you look for revenue stability. You want to have fairness and avoidance and cross subsidies. And the J.D. Powers work, you want to make sure your rate classes are having the proper rates to it. The efficiency, you want efficient price signals. I think the irrigation discussion that several board members and Paul had, and I know from speaking with Jay yesterday, looking at rate structures. Jay did a real good job on the revenue requirements, but there's probably the rate team has about a dozen things they'd like to work on over the next couple of years just to tweak the signals you have on different rates, and we'll bring that to the board over time. And then rates need to be stable, predictable, simple, and easy to understand for customers. So next slide. This is just really highlight the boxes on the right. The electric system annualized growth, traditionally 80s, 90s was a 3.5% growth. Early 2000, 2%. The last 10, 12 years was the annualized 0.7% increase. You can see it's kind of stabilized the last 2 or 3 years, right about the 12 million megawatt hours. That really is the number the last 7 years, and that's the number we're going to use in our financial plan. The water, wastewater, in the pre-2008, there was acquisitions of utilities, and I think it's worth noting the box in the green at the bottom. Unit sales on water peaked in FY07, 13 years ago at 43 billion gallons. It declined 7 years later to 32 billion gallon. The IWRP presentation will touch on that a little bit. And there's a lot of price signals, economic downturn, conservation messages, and it has rebounded back really with the growth of new development in the city the last 6-7 years, and up to 38 billion gallons of unit sales at this point in time. Next slide, please. Just look to the bottom. The notes will say it again. Total JEA rate has been stable or lower since October 1st, 2010. That's 10 years and a couple months. Up top shows the various different rates. The franchise fee went in place in 2008. That's a fee from the city. It shows that stable base rates. I believe that from counting, it looks like 10 out of 11 years. The year that the base rates went up in 2017, fuel went down lower than base went up. We're looking at in FY22 and FY23, do a similar thing where fuel charge is looked to decrease by $3 to $5 over a 2-year period and increase the base rate. So do a switch between the fuel and base, and that's what there's a blue text box that notes down on fuel charge. So the annual rev requirement, and the rev requirement can be met by growth, lower cost, or rate work, and those are the three options. And it's looking at about a total 1% annual rev requirement in the last 3 years of this 5-year plan, and that will be looked at. Next slide. Water, wastewater. Next slide, please, lady. Might be going slow. Go back one for us, please. There you go. Thank you. So water, wastewater, stable base rate. In the model, in our financial plan, we have a potential 2% revenue requirement in year 5. Looking back, rates have been stable since October 1st, 2012. And that's 8 years and counting, at least another 3 or 4 years looking forward. So that's, a long time. We mentioned about the rev requirements. I think the last bullet just highlight, the rev requirements are subject to measurable increases if the capital program continues at these elevated projected levels. It's almost $1.1 billion in the next 3 years. It's 1.5 over 5 years. So 1.5 was what's modeled here. If it does continue at the pace of the next 3 years and increase, whether it's through additional environmental regulations, zero discharge wastewater effluent. Wayne Young has an item on that today. Alternative water supply, we talked during the IWRP, or any other large environmental programs could put pressure on the rates and the revenue requirements. Next slide. Great story, though. I think those are worth showing, those last 2 slides. This is a capital expenditures. On the water system, it's probably 60% of the cost structure is capital. Electric's probably a little bit less than 50 because you got the variable fuel rate in that. And it may be already up to 70 on water wastewater. So JEA has a pricing policy that was brought to the board in June. Every year or two, it'll get brought to the board for some different adjustments. And that kind of guides the pricing policy related to debt, price signals related to current year revenues. And highlight here on top, no new debt. That's a 15-year run on electric system. 10 years going back, 5 years going forward, until 25, after 2025, the next generation of capital will be required with new generation. The water sewer, it looks like we have about a 10-year span of no new debt, and this year will be the first time to issue debt. The blue line is greater than the red line on the bottom, and you show the little box that says debt. These numbers are 382 million and 344 in FY22 and 23. Right now, our capital project list is about $60 million higher than those two numbers. So we as a team have kind of committed that we got to find $60 million of the current project list, and really look at how to put some more robust process and capital program process in place that we can manage and forecast this best for long term. Looking up top, I should note when the red line is greater than the blue line, that's where debt pay down is. So that affords opportunity to pay down some debt. Next slide, please. This is the total debt, variable debt. It peaked in the electric system about $4.2 billion in 2008 or 2009. It's at 2.0 right now. Projected next 5 years to be 1.3 billion. I think it's important to see both systems are about 41 or 42%. The low 40s in debt to asset ratios, great metrics according to peers in the industry. And the water sewer debt was at 2 billion, it's at 1.3 right now, and expected to go to 1.5 billion. But the assets continue to grow. The debt to asset ratio continues to be very strong in the industry. Next two slides, or next slide. The next three slides talk about variable debt, and really just want to include this chart in the package. The board asked about this several times. Historical comparison of the 30-year fixed municipal bond interest on the red, and the blue is the more variable rate. And look at most years the spreads between 1.5% and 3.5%. JEA has used variable rate debt very effectively over decades. But we're going to talk about an option to pay down some variable debt we're looking at right now. The next slide is go ahead and forward it, please, Landon. Same slide, but it goes back 15 years. It was after looking in the 70s when the fixed rates were somewhere between about 8 and 14%. And those are implied rates. The rest of them are actually index rates. So those are for the package. We have about 2-3 more slides to wrap up. One more slide, please. So about $851 million of variable debt. Go back one, please, Landon. $341 million is unhedged. So what we looked at, and the team over the last month basically developed a plan that said there's $100 million available funds to early debt retirement in this current fiscal year. Traditionally, that's been looked at how to retire some fixed debt, callable debt. JEA's looked at and basically called all the debt it can in the next year or so, except there is about, of the 30 million fixed debt, that 100 million will be sliced two ways. So take about 30 million on fixed debt, about 20 is callable, so save some interest savings there. $69 million is going to retire unhedged variable debt. That will bring a savings of about $450,000 a year. It will lower the risk profile on the unhedged variable debt, and ideally, it's paying off principal payments on this variable debt that were maturing in the last half of this decade, FY 26 to 30, which is a key period of time to maintain long-term rate stability for JEA. So it's a real good plan. If we got any questions on that, we'll be glad to take it. But that will take about 70 million or about 20% of variable debt off the books here this fiscal year. Next slide.
I'd suggest we fix whatever we can
fix. The financial metrics of the 5-year plan are all strong. The key ones, again, the low 40% on debt to asset. The CapEx circled on the water, that's the 1.5. The electric's more stable at about a $200 million CapEx program. And we'll continue to monitor the fixed charge coverage. That's a long-term metric that we'll monitor to maintain the strength of the financial balance sheet. The last two slides are not meant to go in detail. The next one, please, Landon. These are the detailed schedules. And really what they are is the top section is unit sales. The section is the cash inflows. The third is cash outflows. The 4 are the key financial metrics. And the 5th is the roll-up of the capital fund balance. It's basically a one-page sheet that shows transparent all the main financial elements of the system. We'll highlight, actually go back one, Landon, on the electric, please. We'll highlight the boxes where there's an increased revenue requirements. Those are 3.1%. The fuel to base switch that we'll have to come to the board for a rate hearing 6 to 8 months from now that we'll continue to monitor. Circled a couple numbers, the $264 million O&M. If we manage to keep O&M expenses lower, that would provide more available funds to pay down debt. At the bottom, there's 100 million and 41. Those are in our plan to early retire debt that maintain the long-term revenue stability. Next slide on water. And really pretty well the same numbers or areas are circled, the O&M at 206 in the 5-year plan. How can JEA be most efficient to keep the cost down for the customers, the financial metrics balance, and we'll look at the ending cash balance on the capital fund and manage the debt issuance to make sure that there's between $20 and $40 million cash balances in the capital funds. And just one last slide, we'll talk about the last bullet. And really the financial 5-year plan upholds the objectives to maintain long-term competitive rates, operational excellence, environmental stewardship, and improving the overall customer experience. Like I mentioned, pretty dense information the team put together over the last couple of months. Great job. But any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
I mean, I make 2 suggestions. One, we fix all the debt we can possible. Second, Brian, if you finish scrubbing all the capital, we're spending a hell of a lot of capital in the next 3 to 5 years. If you scrubbed all these capital projects.
No, I think, one of the things we have an opportunities on both systems to put in, more of the teams looking at the capital projects of normal normal capital allocation, making sure projects, this is in any business on capital, make sure the projects don't change scope. Are they doing the return on investment that was initially required? And look at how to make sure we're deploying those most cost effective. And then the team, the whole overall company knows we got that in front of us right now. And the fixed debt, Bobby, we're fixing out 20% of the variable. We knew that was not going to be enough. We'll continue to look if any savings on the capital O&M will allow us to fix out more variable debt.
Well, Brian, we have an upcoming finance meeting, I believe, in December. So maybe it's something that we can review and look at what our consultants suggest that variable rates are going to look like over the coming 5 years. So we'll address that in the finance committee, Bobby.
Great. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Marty.
And I think one option too, when we issue the water wastewater new debt, 2 to 4 years from now, you could possibly at that point in time, there might be a good opportunity that the Treasury team's looking at as we speak.
Well, I think one of the real opportunities is to review our current positions and see if there's a way we can blend and extend and reduce the rates that we have currently on our derivatives pool. So, we'll address that in the finance committee.
All right. Thank you, Marty.
In deference to the older gentleman here at the table, we'll take a 5-minute break.
The much younger woman appreciates it.
Tom.
Sir.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, we're doing well. One day at a time.
One step at a time.
Yeah, that's all we can do. We're doing well. We really are.
Are your cases going up?
Everybody's are, but not spiking. They're just slow, steady up, and we've got plenty of capacity. We've got all the testing we need, the PPE, the staffing, the therapeutics. We've got plenty of bed capacity. That's the message. And honestly, what I'm more concerned about than anything is the number of people that are delaying the care that they need and are going to get.
We had one of our key guys who was been with our company 25 years. He had heart problems, didn't go in the emergency room, died.
There's too many stories like that. That's a big part of my messaging. If there's time, make a comment at the Civic Council meeting tonight. That's the message. People need to understand, cases are going up. It's happening everywhere. Everybody's going back indoors. I mean, this is not unexpected. The hospital systems, at least here in Jacksonville, are prepared, ready, doing fine. Do not put off things that you need to get addressed.
I'll tell you, people in the community think you're doing a fantastic job. I just hear it time and time.
That's humbling. I appreciate that. We've got a great team.
Yeah, but you make the team work. We're glad to have you in Jacksonville.
That's
No,
very kind of
seriously.
you. Yeah, I'm honored to be here.
We're blessed.
Thank you. I
No,
appreciate that.
I'm serious. It comes time and time again.
It means a lot. Thank you.
You're the type of leader we need. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what you guys are dealing with. No, but I mean,
Been a strange year.
huh?
Been a strange year. But it's been, I just wrote I do a weekly piece on Fridays. It's called The Weekly Win. That goes out. I actually just wrote the Thanksgiving piece about,
I was talking about how great a job.
Very kind. Thank you. I appreciate
We're glad to have you in this community.
Just kind of enumerating the things that I'm thankful for inside this crazy year. There's a lot of great stories that have emerged, great people that have stepped up. There's a lot to be thankful for. We've learned more than we ever thought we would learn at a velocity that we hadn't been driven to previously. So it's been an interesting year.
We're blessed to have you in here.
Man,
Yeah, we really are.
that's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. 300 pages in 3 minutes.
I don't know why they put all that stuff out there.
I think you'd love it. Okay.
We'll come back to order. Bruce, are you still up? Or Brian, are you still up? I lost my screen.
Brian is still up.
Brian, are you there for the integrated water resource plan?
There he is.
We see you, we can't hear you.
Sounds like a rock and roll song.
Oh, well, I'll jump the gun anyhow. Okay, we're all here. Brian, can you give us the integrated water resource plan? Somebody. Brian, can you give us the integrated water resource plan?
Ready to go?
Great.
All right. Well, we have the integrated water resource plan. This is a combined effort, the environmental team, the water operations, system planning, and finance. The project was embarked on about 18 months ago. So we'll go through this. There's about 20 slides. I'm going to focus a lot on slide number 8 and 9, and any slide that the board would like us to. So 8 and 9, I'll spend a lot of time. The rest of them, I'll try to move through pretty quick. The next slide, please, Lennon. The agenda will be look at the Iwrp process. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
We got you.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you then. The Iwrp process itself, it's really a one water concept, looking at how water has become more of a water, wastewater, stormwater, how it all goes together and how you pick the next water supply. Well, I think it's really important to go through a backdrop of what JEA's water system is, the water supply, and the Iwrp recommendations. Next slide, please. Really, this is meant for the printed package that shows all the integrated connected water systems. The top right, stormwater, is not managed by JEA. That's managed by the city and the state. Some northeast, Midwest utilities have combined stormwater and sanitary sewer systems. That's not JEA. But in an overall industry, it includes stormwater management. And then on the left is more what JEA's focused on historically, was the water supply come from an aquifer. In the future, it's going to be these other elements. And this is more of a build slide. So we'll go to the next slide, show where we are at today, please, Layman. So this is the current system. Very fortunate in Northeast Florida to have the Florida aquifer. And that is the water supply. There's 137 wells through 38 plants. If I had to slide over again, I would have put some numbers on it. So there's 120 million gallons a day coming up through the water supply, through the wells, sent over to JEA's drinking water plants, 37 or 38 water treatment plants around the city. Some are large, some are small, and we got medium ones, all controlled out of the control center and we have backup control centers, but centralized, but they all are independently geographically located. And we're fortunate. All we're doing is aerating it and put some sodium hypochlorite in for chlorine, and several of them have some ozone, a little bit higher level disinfection and aeration. The customers demand it, whether it's commercial, industrial, or residential. And then there's a reclaim system that takes the treated wastewater. So you got 120 million gallons going to the left. Customers use 108. That's about a 10% loss. That's pretty common industry. 85 million gallons a day go to the wastewater system. The difference between that 108 and 85 as mentioned is irrigation. It was brought up in the earlier presentation about what kind of prices signals we can do to make sure we're using that resource most, and its most valuable method. And putting on grass is probably not the most valuable method of the aquifer water. 20 million gallons a day goes to reclaim, and the discharge of the water reclamation or the wastewater plants treated to high level quality goes into receiving waters, mostly the river. The next slide is the future system. So what JEA is going to do is continue to expand the reclaim system. It's going to start a water purification process. There has been a pilot. We'll talk about it. And then you take that water, some of it will go back into the reclaim system, and eventually we'll look at Aqua Recharge, and we'll discuss that in a future slide. So the integrated system, how do you plan for all this? Next slide, please. The JEA water system in 2020, and verbally I mentioned this, our average annual daily flow is 119 million gallons a day, split across 4 grids, 2 major grids, the north grid, the south grid, and then you have Nassau up top, and there's a small one along A1A in St. Johns County. The 46 million gallons a day, the north grid, and the south grid is consuming 65. That 2 numbers are convenient. There's actually a 19 million gallon day as we speak, transfer from the north grid to the south grid at the Main Street plant. So north grid's producing 65, consuming 46, south grid's producing 46, and consuming 65. Next slide, please. This is really important historical on the JEA water. You look on the left, 10 years ago, the average consumption per capita residential is about 100 gallons a day, 2.5 people in a house. Now it's down to 75 gallons per day. So good work has been done in the last decade at JEA, in the industry, in the state, but more good work needs to happen on conservation. That 25 gallons per day of conservation, about times a million people, round the number, it's about 9 billion gallons of water a year saved through that. The slide on the right shows that the orange is the customer growth or meter count growth, and the blue is the average daily production that is produced from the wells in the system. That's what's regulatory, not what consumers use, but what's produced gets regulated. And it peaked at 128 million gallons a day in 2007, and it decreased down to 100 million gallons a day in 2013. Has been rising in the last 7-8 years with the growth in Jacksonville. And that decrease was conservation, reclaim, expansion, and pricing signals. We know how to decrease water demand if you need to, and that was a good experience. Next slide. This is what I'd like to walk us through. If you look at JEA was acquired the water sewer system from the city in 1997, and been very fortunate to use the Florida aquifer as its water supply source. We'll continue to use it for a long time and want to make sure that's sustainable for a long time. But we do need to bring some alternative water supply sources in. So the reclaim system started in 2000. I probably should say 1988, 99, wells were getting drilled on an emergency basis. Those are the years of extreme drought in Jacksonville, and there were fires. You don't want to get that emergent construction mode ever again. Started the reclaim system, 0 MGD then, 20 now. The first river crossing in 2004 for the Main Street plant. 2006, I got to figure out why we put probably more wells. 2011 was a consolidated consumptive use permit issued by the St. Johns River Water Management District. That is the regulator of the groundwater system that JEA utilizes. It was a 20-year CUP. The first time all the plants were consolidated one. Most utilities, large utilities, started moving that way with the districts across the state. And that restricts the amount of water that JEA can use. It is capped at 142 million gallons a day in this fiscal year starting January 1st. That will be the number. A second river crossing happened in 2014, continued to work on the well fields. And then about 18 months ago, the organization started the Iwrp study, hired Cdm Smith. They've done a wonderful job. I call it a textbook. It was about 10 technical memos. But really we've been working on the last few months to turn that textbook into a playbook that we can execute a plan going forward. Team's done a real good job working to take those 10 or 12 memos, The book will be issued at the end of this month, which is a week or two, that has consolidated that, provided an executive summary and many slides of this presentation were pulled from the IWR study. And the IWRP to implement over the next decade, and it's really a 20-year plan. It does look out even further, but it's a 10-year and a 20-year plan itemized out. What is the playbook? That's what we're looking at. More conservation, more reclaim, start water purification, looking at aquifer recharge, testing that, looking at brackish groundwater treating, and then get prepared for the new CUP to be issued in 2031. So that's 10 years from now, but it will come quick. Next slide. The potable water demands. JEA has about 300 million gallons a day of plant capacity, but only allowed to use 142. So, and then for example, at Deerwood, it's 20 million gallon a day capacity. Its CUP allocation is 7. It has operational flexibility to use 20% more, so it can use up to 8.4 million gallons a day. We have several plants like that it can use it for maximum days, but over an annual basis, we have to monitor to make sure we sustain the well fields long term. Under normal weather conditions, that demand the JEA has is expected to see the CUP allocation in 2037. That's the red line and the box in the bottom intersect. That's during the normal weather conditions. We also have to design for those drought years. Under dry weather conditions, that CUP could be exceeded in 2028 on the current growth that's been happening the last several years. That's why we're actively looking at any option we can. Next slide. This is the next slide. We'll go through quick. This is a reclaim system. It was 20 years ago. It's at 20 million gallons a day. Convenient to remember. All new developments are required in this area and shaded in this magenta color. Have to have reclaimed water. JEA will get a line to the customer within 5 years to reclaim. We do need to expand this area more on the west side and north side as development continues to happen. Next slide. Really meant for the book. This is the water supply transfer. It was called the TWMP, Total Water Management Plan. And a new acronym came out, the South Grid Integrated Piping System. That's the dotted lines. And these are large pipes. You can see along Matthews Bridge in the bottom, I think it was a 30 or 36-inch pipe underneath the river and then laid adjacent to the Arlington Expressway that helps transfer water across the river at 2 different places. Raw water, not treated yet. Next slide. The potential water conservation, always the best choice. It does cost money for conservation demand when you're looking at programs. So in the customer experience group, Vicki Nichols and team has been working diligently on it. They do have great programs already for customers where there's electric and water, but there's a cafeteria plan here that this study's looked at, about 10 or 12 different programs that targeted to get at least 6 MGD by 2040. And the team will further develop that as we go in this fiscal year. Next slide. Purified water program. We'll focus on the the middle section, the demonstration project. JEA tested through our R&D pilot about $2.4 million on the left, about 30 million gallons a day. But where we stand today is looking at building a 1 MGD facility approximately to start looking at how can you treat wastewater effluent to drinking water standards. And that would take some time. It is done. The marquee project in the United States is in Orange County in California. There are some other facilities around the country. And nowhere in Florida is doing this at a significant level. Altamont Springs put one in a little bit bigger than our pilot. So JEA is kind of a leader in the state. We continue to want to move forward on that, but we have to go cautiously, cost effective as you can be in this. We have to confirm what are we going to do with this purified water after you clean it. First, you can put it back in the reclaim system or effluent. Eventually, look at possible Aqua Recharge. Next slide, please, which should be the Aqua Recharge slide. Aqua Recharge is really like I mentioned in Orange County, California is doing this, is taking treated wastewater to drinking level quality, inject it down to a lower area in the aquifer to buoy up the water above to create a barrier from the brackish water zone to the freshwater zone. And we will work with the district over time on looking at how this be implemented in a very diligent, process control manner over the next decade to see if this is a long-term solution. Next slide. Brackish groundwater is done commonly throughout different places in Florida, all up the East Coast, basically taking brackish water, a different part of the aquifer, lower down, has more chlorides in it. You have to have higher pressures. You have RO filters to push the water through. For every 100 gallons going through, you might only capture 60 to 70 gallons out of that. The other has to be concentrate and go back down, discharge somewhere else. You have higher pressures, energy, metallurgy for it, but it is an option. We're looking to do that in Nassau County. Next slide. So when the IWRP basically looks at these water supply options we just went through and said the main criteria is water supply certainty. You've got to make sure you got the water supply. It needs to be cost effective as possible, but there's none of these that are very cost effective compared to an aquifer. It has to be environmental stewardship. There are advantages if you get zero discharge and reduce the effluent going to the rivers. And you have to get it accepted by the community and make sure it can be operated by the team. Next slide. The outcome of this, all these processes are a lot more expensive than aquifer. JEA has been very privileged to be able to utilize the aquifer as a supply source. For the capital cost of the aquifer is about $4. These other ones range, you can see anywhere from $8 to $20 to $25. So we're talking 3 to 5 times the cost on the production side. And production is about 15% of JEA's cost overall. So we look at integrating some of this as we go forward the next 20 years. Maury, Board Member Lanahan, we talked about capacity fees at the F&A committee. Capacity fees for water right now is right at $1 per gallon. The cost of producing water from the aquifer is $4. These new ones are, as you see, $20, $25. So much different than capacity fees collected for new incremental water supply. Next slide. So the recommendation is continue the water transfer through the large pipes, continue the expansion of the reclaim system, of course, continue, of course, the multi-year demand-side management conservation programs, enhance that significantly, and then bring alternative water supplies online. The Aqua Recharge, Purified water on the South Grid in Cedar Bay, brackish groundwater in Nassau, and out by the airport, looking at that. We'll work with the district on these different type of plans. 2 more slides left. The next one should just be a schedule of projects. So, excuse me. This shows you need 14 million gallons a day of plant capacity. That's plant capacity. And then on the right, how is it going to be supplied? We're going to look at conservation. We're going to look at reclaim, and the bottom, the alternate water resource, 5.6 MGD. So when we do that, you have to have the use and the need of different plans. The next slide just shows the capital program. About 10 projects to occur. Please turn, Lennon. 10 projects occur in the next two decades in this alternative water supply. 5.6 MGD in the first decade. The green box shows that need to be online about 2030. So we got about 10 years to move into it. Probably the biggest item is to try to move forward fairly soon on a purified system to understand how we can get the testing and get the training going on that. And then in the next decade, in 2030, is additional plants. So that'd be about 20% of the water supply 20 years from now is projected to be alternative supply. And one last summary slide, I believe, is, want safe, reliable, sustainable water, cost-effective, and being environmental. This is really a backdrop. I think over time there'll be various different presentations. We thought it was very good timing to bring in with the IWRP finalizing, and we'll publish that after the new year. But we have a draft final that'll be available in this next week or 2. Love to take any questions if there are any, or suggestions.
Questions?
Brian, this might be a dated question, and it goes back to when I was on the board previously. We were ahead of the state, as I recall, in reclaimed water. And our neighboring partners south of us were drawing a lot from the aquifer. Has the water management district, worked with them to work on their consumption, which is taking from our aquifer?
Probably try to ask that. I appreciate the question on that. As many items, we work together, utility groups in Northeast Florida. We all get managed by the St. John Management District. We do work together, but we also get regulatory individually. JEA does supply a lot of water to St. Johns County. That's one element of that. And some of that actually comes from Main Street and in the Deerwood area, too. The district is working with all utilities. JEA, we were at 0 reclaim. I think the growth to 20 is probably one of the strongest in the state that we've done the last 20 years, Board Member Lanahan. So I'm not sure if I answered specifically, but the JEA is a leader, continues to lead, and we plan on staying in front of that. We still get a lot of pressure on the regulatory to think about what's going to happen to the cup, and while we're spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that we're making a sustainable resource, seeing the conservation, we want to be a leader. How much?
Yeah, no, there were, I'll call them water wars between Florida and Georgia years ago, and candidly between us, and it was further south than St. Johns County, and it appears maybe that that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, I think the answer to Central Florida is looking at more of using a freshwater lake and not so much, haven't heard much in the last few years about, St. Johns River being as a source. I haven't, at least. And but we can follow up in more detail with you on that. But I think it's really the push is going to Aqua Recharge. That's really what the district has been state for the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I was really intrigued. I'm really intrigued with that solution. I think that makes a great deal of sense. And have we seen the saline intrusion in Nassau County stabilize over the past years, or is that still an issue?
It's an issue where one of the options in Nassau County that we're recommending is use a brackish water groundwater. And if we pull it and it stabilizes and it's done, often, then that is acceptable. What you don't want to do is pull the brackish water and continue to have more chlorides. So we know we're going to have to utilize brackish groundwater in Nassau County in some areas. And also by the airport, we plan on doing that too.
Yeah, it's an issue in Nassau County.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Brian. Great report. That's very well done and very well presented. Wayne Young, can you talk to us about the potential prohibition of wastewater effluent disposal?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair Baker, Directors, Paul, Jay. This is a resolution that Councilmember DeFore referenced at the beginning of the board meeting. What you see is the first page of the resolution. And this item is seeking approval from the board to present the resolution that's in your packet to the City Council requesting their support of JEA's position on potential state legislation addressing the elimination of surface water discharge from our wastewater treatment plants. During the September JEA board meeting, a presentation was delivered on the state legislation that was introduced in the Florida Senate and the Florida House in January of this year. The purpose of that legislation was to eliminate nearly all surface water discharges from domestic wastewater treatment plants in Florida by January 2026. Neither bill was passed by the Senate. However, we do expect that a new Senate bill will be introduced addressing the same concept when the session meets in March of next year. It is our position that any bill introduced next year containing similar criteria to what was proposed in January 2020 will prove financially and technically untenable and would place a major burden on ratepayers, especially if the bill included an implementation timeline of only 5 to 6 years. This resolution submitted to you today for your review and approval highlights various technical, economic, and environmental challenges that would be presented by a new legislative bill. Those challenges are referenced in 18 statements within the resolution that address concerns that include territory geography, hydrogeology of our particular area, population density, impact to customers, as well as impact to current planning for community growth and development, and future planning for water management, which is some of the things that Brian covered in his previous presentation. The resolution also makes recommendations. Jerry, if you can go down to page 151. These recommendations that we're providing are intended to provide legislators with information for thought. It is our hope that the information provided will assist in developing a bill that will meet overarching objectives that's desired by the previous bill, but at the same time provide due consideration to the unique characteristics and operations of those impacted by the bill. Our recommendations include implementing a timeline based on measurable impacts to the customers and to the environment. Instead of having the 5-year window that they were looking for in the previous bill, we were suggesting nothing less than 10 years. We're also looking at seeking steps to minimize the impact to capital and cost investment in our customer rates, something that was also covered in our financial brief that you received earlier. As a point of interest, an engineering firm, and I covered this in September, but it's worth repeating, an engineering firm prepared a cost analysis in regards to implementing the 2020 legislation and estimated that the cost to eliminate all surface water discharge in the state of Florida would exceed $28 billion. JEA is working internally with consultants in developing our future water management plan, which you saw earlier presented by Brian. And Jerry, if you can scroll down to the Cdm report. And you can just go to the cover page right there. This is a cover page of a report that you have in your packet. Our own internal assessment of JEA costs to eliminate all surface water discharge indicates costs could well exceed $1 billion. The Cdm report that you have in your notebook, and this is a cover page here, is an initial roll-up of technical and infrastructure findings that constitute our concerns and challenges, many of which are highlighted in our resolution. As we move forward to the next legislative session in March of next year, we'll continue to engage our representatives as well as others in the legislature on what our position is with respect to the bill. We will be addressing the Duval County delegation that's going to be in town on the 23rd of November on this matter. And the purpose, once again, of this resolution is to put it forth to the City Council to receive their support in accomplishing what we desire to have with respect to modifying language and supporting legislation that's not going to just work for JEA, but also take into consideration challenges that other entities and other utilities throughout the state could be facing. And
thank you,
are there
Wayne.
any questions?
Are there questions?
I'll move it.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion.
I think this is, I mean, I'm very concerned about this. I just think that we should you're talking about $28 billion. I don't think that number is, I think it could be higher. I think the $1 billion number could be higher. And I think, we have alternatives that are more environmentally friendly. And I just strongly suggest that we really get behind this and really think this thing through, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Wayne, quick question, Wayne. Do we know the other utilities? I think they're in the same boat, right? Or how much of an uphill battle do we anticipate on this? Do you have any idea?
There's several items involved with it. There are other utilities that will be impacted by this. We are JEA. We are the largest right now utility that does utilize surface water discharge. So there are smaller utilities that will fall into an exemption category whereby that they don't have as much surface water discharge, so may be exempt from the bill. But as far as support throughout, those utilities that will be impacted have the same concerns with respect to achieving a timeline that is just untenable, as well as costs associated with them, as well as to the impact that it will have on their planning that's being conducted right now with respect to their long-term cup uses, et cetera. So we have brought on lobbyists. We're working with Greg Robinson to address this issue. We're also working with Hopping Green and Sam's to address this issue and take it to the legislative body. So we're looking at that total utilization of resources and assets to bring people and other utilities together to support this for us.
And Wayne, our resolution limits client impact or customer impact by 10%. Rates shouldn't increase by up to 10%. Remind me, what was the number that you projected if we thought we had to enact? It was significantly more of a rate increase.
I will have to look that up and find out for you. I don't know right off the bat.
Yeah, and I was just going to make sure we understood the delta between what we think it would impact our customers to what the legislation or the resolution limits customer impact to. And I really applaud the Councilwoman DeFore's proactive approach that she's prepared to address this.
But this pending legislation, that they're talking about might not, I don't think it's the best solution. I mean, that's the big thing that our delegation needs to know. So that's why I think this is concerning. And I also, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I think we're different. I mean, every area of the state is solving this problem differently, and I think we have a solution that could be different than the other pieces of the state, parts of the state. So I'm just...
Yeah, I'm really interested in that delta, though, because I think the explanation of the customer impact is important.
The impression is it's a sledgehammer.
Agreed.
Solution and not a nuanced one. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Good presentation. Iwrp, can you talk to us about the Racetrack Road water main?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. The St. Johns County is widening Racetrack Road at the Durbin Creek Bridge from 2 lanes to 6 lanes, including a pedestrian walkway. For the westbound lanes, the county constructed the 3-lane bridge. And for the eastbound lanes, the plan was to expand the existing 2-lane bridge to 3 lanes, including a walkway by driving piles for the larger bridge deck. However, within the right-of-way on the south side of the existing bridge lie a JEA 30-inch potable water main and a 24-inch reclaimed water main that serves the southeast area of our service territory. These mains would be impacted by the placement of the piles and would need to be abandoned and relocated at an estimated cost of $3.6 million, for which JEA would be responsible. So JEA and the county have developed an alternative solution where a new pedestrian walkway would be constructed without having to drive piles, and the water mains can stay in place. The estimated cost for this solution is $2.1 million. It is being proposed that the JEA and county share in the cost. The county will pay $592,962, which would have been the cost for the walkway portion if the original plans were constructed. JEA will pay the remainder, which is $1,525,038. With this solution, JEA is expected to save about $2.1 million. Also, with this agreement, St. Johns County will grant JEA a utility easement which protects and allows both water mains to remain in place in perpetuity. This is deemed to be the best solution with the least amount of risk to JEA's assets. So we're bringing this agreement today to the board and recommend that the board enter into an agreement with the St. Johns County for the Racetrack Road water main and reclaimed main and transfer funds to the county in the amount of $1,525,038. Thank you.
Move it.
Questions?
Second.
I have some questions. I'm glad we're working with St. Johns County, but I stumble a little bit on why their failure to engineer the road correctly becomes our problem. What?
Mr. Chair, if I can, our water mains currently lay in their right-of-way, and so it's typical with DOT or the city projects when they are expanding or working on on the infrastructure, we typically work with other agencies to move our mains if it's possible. And in this case, it being our mains being in the right of way, we are responsible for moving those utilities. And the main difference in this agreement is that we will put our mains in the utility easement, which protects our mains from having to be, if they have to be moved in the future, it would be at the cost of whichever agency is doing the infrastructure improvement.
And this agreement says that it does not cover replacement. If we have to replace the main, that again is at our expense. We can't do it in that easement, is the way I read that. And I'm just curious if I read that accurately and why it's in there. And I guess probably Jody would be the one that would know best.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, JEA would bear the cost of the relocation pursuant to the Florida statute. It's 337-403 when we have utilities within right-of-ways of local governments and that expansion. Their original plans and designs occurred like 2.5, 3 years ago. We looked at the plans and they were requiring us with a 30-day notice. We had to move at our expense those lines based upon their planning. And when we looked at those plans, we said that there's some kind of alternate because these are, pretty deep lines, big lines at the 30-inch water main and a 24-inch reclaim line that based on Florida statute, because we were in their right-of-way, roadway projects and specific to statutory requirements, it was going to be on our nickel. When we went to negotiate with them about an alternative plan, we came up with a pedestrian walkway to be separated and the pilings would not interfere with our lines. And it was a negotiation worked through with St. Johns County and all the engineers at the time. This has been going on for quite some time. But one of the issues that I had is that what happens if they expand again or they do something else that would require us to move our lines. So I negotiated the easement with them that now we have a real estate interest where our pipes lay. So if there's something in that easement that gave you pause on the ability to modify or change, it really gives us the property right to have our lines there. So if they were to do any additional expansions or maintenance, we would not have to move our lines at our expense. St. Johns County, any future roadway projects there that would require our utilities to move, we've got the real estate interest now versus being in their specific right of way, and it would be on their cost. So that's what the easement language is supposed to correct. And I'll make sure before we execute it that there's nothing in there that would prohibit our ability to modify or maintenance, do any kind of maintenance on our lines.
Thank you. So it really is a give and take on both sides, and an example of working together with St. Johns County. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Alan McElroy, can you talk to us about the HQ2 Hardened facility real estate acquisition?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Baker. This morning, we're going to have our Director of Real Estate Services, Jordan Pope. He'll be sharing with you our resolution for the real property acquisition for the HQ2 or the Hardened facility. So, Jordan, you're all yours.
Thank you, Alan. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the board. For your consideration today before you is the proposed acquisition of approximately 2.27 acres of real property in downtown Jacksonville for a hardened facility we commonly refer to as HQ2. The board will recall that back in May of this year, the headquarters program was reduced in anticipation of a future facility, which is the topic of our discussion today. That reduction was done in anticipation of having this hardened facility that would provide the continuity of mission-critical functions that JEA performs in gray sky conditions while still allowing practical workspace for blue sky conditions. The proposed location of this Hardened facility is in the Lavilla area of downtown Jacksonville, and we have provided 2 location maps. They are on pages 238 and 239 of the board package. This location is across the street from the Lavilla School of the Arts and is less than 1 mile from the new JEA headquarters building that is now under construction, City Hall, and the City of Jacksonville's Emergency Operations Center. The site is centrally located, similar to the headquarters building, for ease of employee access, as well as movement between the JEA headquarters building and this proposed Hardened facility. I will note that although the proposed location is downtown, it met some important criteria. One is it is outside of an evacuation zone. There's a very small portion of downtown, what I'll call the central business district, that is not in an evacuation zone, and this proposed location is there. Further, it is outside the 100-year floodplain elevation for current FEMA flood maps. Further, this site is adjacent to JEA's Church Street Electric Substation, which would allow the proposed facility to be connected to JEA's most reliable distribution system, which is the downtown electric grid. One of the potential benefits of this site is that the seller owns a surface parking lot in proximity to the proposed location, and they have expressed their willingness to allow JEA personnel to use that surface lot in critical response events for employee parking. Should the board today approve the acquisition of the real property, JEA staff would issue through a competitive procurement a design build request for proposals for the proposed Hardened facility. The location is actually 2 parcels that are owned by Lavilla Partners 3 LLLP. It consists of the east parcel at approximately 1.4 acres and the west parcel at approximately 0.87 acres for the total of 2.27. On the west parcel, JEA received an appraisal in the amount of $800,000. Likewise, the seller received their own appraisal in the amount of $1,160,000. JEA has negotiated a purchase price for the west parcel at JEA's appraised value of $800,000. On the east parcel, JEA's appraised value was $1,375,000, while the seller's appraisal came in at $2 million. JEA has negotiated a purchase price for the east parcel in the amount of $1,646,568. In total, JEA's appraisal for those 2 parcels was $175,000, and the seller's appraisal was $3,160,000. The total negotiated purchase price for those is $2,446,568. This represents an amount $271,568 above JEA's appraised value, but $713,432 less than the seller's appraisal. In addition, these 2 parcels were previously included as part of the Lavilla Master Permit, where compensating stormwater treatment has already been provided. JEA, in conversations with the City of Jacksonville Public Works Department, estimates that this condition may result in an estimated $79,000 in avoided cost as part of site development, which will be subject to further evaluation in the course of site design. The request today is for the Board of Directors to approve the purchase of real property as outlined in Resolution 2020-11, and the negotiated purchase agreement with the seller is included in the board package. Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions from you or the board, and we also have Nancy Kilgo available to answer any questions regarding next steps for the Hardened facility design and construction should the board vote to move forward with this transaction today. Thank you.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, I'm okay with the site, but were there other sites that we were looking at that were part of the sort of differential? And how do we narrow down to this one?
Can you hear that?
Mr. Chair, yes, sir. I believe that was Dr. Haley.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Dr. Haley. We did consider other sites. We considered some JEA-owned sites. We considered some non-JEA-owned sites. We actually considered a couple city-owned parcels right here in close proximity in Lavilla, as well as a state-owned site just north of State Street, in addition to many, many others. In talking with the city and the state, those were going to be a little bit of a longer timeline than what was provided here at the this Lavilla Partners 3 site. And given its proximity to the JEA headquarters, and of course, when working in gray sky conditions, that proximity to the city's emergency operations center and other government buildings is really kind of a critical element. And so we felt like, all things considered, this was really, given timeline and location, the prime location to site this hardened facility.
And Dr. Hay, I'll add, I worked on this and it trying to find something that was above the.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that was very difficult to find, and I give Jordan and the team a lot of credit because we've spent the last, I don't know how many months working through this and working through the price, but there was not a lot of opportunities if you want to be in downtown location.
Thank you.
And Jordan, you get props, by the way, for being the earliest decorated for Christmas I think I've ever seen. So put your Santa hat on. It's fabulous. The surface parking you referenced, it appears that there's adequate parking, but having lived through counting on surface parking and it disappeared on me, can we get a second and a third option for surface parking for emergency purposes?
Ms. Lenahan, yes, ma'am. I will note, I should mention, of course, we'll have our own parking on the site, and then, of course, there's the site there that was referenced that the seller owns. Further, there is Community First Credit Union in close proximity. I'm happy to have a conversation with them, and potentially even the city of Jacksonville. We'll take that as an action item to make sure that we do have those other options. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. And then I've got a Jody question. It's always been hard to approve things not knowing whether I have a conflict or not. So I don't know who the partners are, and I'm not asking to know who the partners are for the La Villa partners, but in the spirit of transparency, none of the board members know whether we've got a potential conflict with one of those partners. So in the past, we were able to approve things with no known conflict. Is that appropriate in this action, Jody?
That would be appropriate in this action, unless there's some kind of a knowledge that there is a potential or a true potential, I guess, conflict that you may be aware of at this time. If there's a lender or a partner that's involved, but you don't have any knowledge of it at this time, you can vote to approve this action.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Good point. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did we have a motion on that one?
Actually, I'm not sure we did.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'll move it.
I'll second.
thank you, madam. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Alan McElroy, can you come back and give us a Jacksonville Small and Emerging Business Quarterly Report?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Chair Baker. This morning, I will give you, I'll be sharing our year-end report, Jsap report for FY20. I do want to say I'm very proud of Rita Scott, our manager of Jsap program, and our entire procurement team for a very successful year. Next slide, please. For FY20, our available project spend was $67 million. And when I say available spend, that is the area of opportunity where we have JSAP participation. Each year we strive to get about 20% of our available spend as our goal for JSAP vendors. This past year we set that goal at 25%, or $17 million. I'm proud to say that we exceeded our goal by achieving $18.9 million, or 111% of our goal. We are currently working with 92 JSAP vendors, 48 of which are prime vendors, which is outstanding. Next slide, please. Another metric that we track is the number of JSAP vendors we're doing business with, of new JSAP vendors. At the end of the fiscal year, we had 10 new JSAP vendors that are listed on the screen. You can see the type of work that they do on the left-hand side: the safety consultant, fleet tire maintenance and repair services, fence services, etc. But these are the 10 10 new vendors, so we're growing our base, which is outstanding. Next slide. Another metric that we track are contracts awarded to JSAP vendors. JEA awarded $18.8 million to our JSAP vendors. 6 of those were awarded as prime contracts, which again is a great accomplishment. We're constantly looking for prime opportunities for our JSAP vendors. Next slide, please. Due to COVID, we hosted our very first virtual JSAP Procurement Summit on September the 15th. The summit highlighted the Hardened group, which was with one of our JSAP successful projects within our facilities team. We also focused on the FY21 bid opportunities for JSAP vendors. During the summit, we had 2 breakout sessions to have panel discussions with our facilities and water and wastewater groups. The prime vendors that participated were Freedom Landscaping, Jacobs Engineering, and Petticoat Smith. The breakout sessions offered an excellent opportunity for the attendees to network and ask questions of the panelists. I'd like to share with you a video from that summit. The video was filmed. This is the disclaimer. The video was filmed prior to the end of the year, so some of the numbers are a little off from what I quoted just a minute ago, which just says that we continued working all the way to the end of the fiscal year. Go ahead, Eric.
JEA's interim CEO, Paul McElroy, opened this year's JSAP Summit with a call to action.
We're here to serve you. We're here to answer questions. We're here to help you through this process that can be at times seem overwhelming and difficult and challenging, but we're here to help you through it step by step to be successful. Again, so we can help you grow, you can help us grow, we both can help our community grow into the future.
In fiscal year 2020, JEA spent over $17 million on its JSAP program. The money went to 90 JSAP vendors, including 9 companies new to the program. That's why this year, the JSAP Summit included lots of practical tips to help vendors get jobs, both big and small, at JEA.
We are always actively looking for JSAP contractors who can complete our work. If you have something that you're particularly good at, if you are looking for work in a particular time frame, I encourage you to email us and let us know about your availability or your skill set. Our smaller jobs, sometimes it happens that we say, hey, I've got to get this done. Who do I have? And if we know that you're out there and you're willing to work, we can put you on our list on that. And that is not how most of our work goes.
The summit also included lists of upcoming projects.
On continuing services, what you have here is everything that's up for renewal or for bid for the next coming fiscal year.
And there were breakout sessions featuring prime contractors who already work with JEA.
Because it takes about a couple of days to get our health and safety forms filled out. But we have folks who can help you, not only the representative Jacobs project manager who's working with you to help you with the forms, but we have some subcontracts professionals to help guide you through. So I would say be patient.
In the next fiscal year, JEA's JSAP program will see some enhancements, including a seminar like this one for prime contractors. It all adds up to one thing: JEA's commitment to its JSAP program.
Thank you, Eric. As I said in closing, we had a very successful year with our JSAP program, and I'm proud of the team. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Alan. Questions?
I remember when we started this program, Mr. Chair, so maybe I'm dating myself, but I am so proud to see the level of support we've been giving small and emerging business in our community. This is exceeding the expectations that the board that put this program together had, and I'll just continue to challenge you to raise the bar. And thank you for your outreach during COVID. It looks like that virtual environment might be something we stick with going forward.
Could be. Thank you very much, Board Lieutenant.
Alan, what are our plans for 2021, our goals?
Our goal for 2021, we have an available spend of $90 million, and our spend goal is 20% or $18 million. And we've already we've received our numbers for October, which we've started off on a great start with almost $1.7 million already spent for our Jsap program, which is about 9% of our goal projected out. It looks like we're going to be popping this goal off also. So I'm very proud of it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the workforce strategy presentation by Robert Mack.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Hopefully everybody can hear me, and good morning to everybody. Just a brief introduction. My name's Rob Mack. I'm the Director of Organizational Effectiveness and Payroll here at JEA. I've been asked on behalf of the entire HR team at JEA to provide an update on the JEA's current workforce strategy and the work going on into the coming year. I think we can all agree that the JEA workforce absolutely is the most valuable asset. It's who we are. And if you'd allow me for the next few minutes to provide you a status and an update and some of the key strategies that we're planning to work on this year to make sure that we sustain it. Landon, can you go to the next slide, please? Here are some key metrics for us to start with. As you can see right off the top, we currently have a little over 1,900 JEA regular employees and approximately 200 supplemental workforce contractors currently deployed. You might also note that in the lower left-hand, this is over time what our total headcount has looked like. In spite of a lot of the system growth that some of the previous presentations have spoken to over the past decade, we've been able to sustain a relatively flat headcount. And we attribute that in large part to leveraging technology that's allowed us to free up resources and be able to shift and reallocate those into the growing areas of the business without effectively increasing the headcounts. Over on the right-hand side, you can also see that we've been very fortunate to experience a relatively stable attrition rate through the last several years, running between 6 and 7%. In spite of some of the major events that we have occurred as an organization, including in 2017, the major pension legislation change that took place at that time, and then obviously the Stowe-related events in 2019. One key piece of information inside the red circle I had to draw your attention to, because this is a topic that is in the field right now, is note the difference between our current retirement eligibility rate and the percent versus the rate that have actually retired. Now, this is a historic, and this has historically been a very stable number, and something that we use from our planning purposes to really focus on that actual retirement with that number. And we'll look at more at retirement eligibility here in a minute when Landon flips the slide for me. Okay, thank you. As you're aware, JEA has a highly skilled workforce that requires long lead times to acquire and develop. So monitoring retirement eligibility is a key aspect of our planning process. As you can see over time in the left-hand graphic that we've had a declining rate of retirement eligibility that actually peaked in 2011. That was a little over 25% at the time. Today, that rate is around 18.7% of our workforce, our regular workforce is currently eligible to retire. So for reference, I added the right-hand graphic with the recent proposed JEP legislation that's being circulated and what that would do to JEA. And as you can see in a holistic sense, it nearly doubles the rate of eligibility of employees that would immediately, upon the approval of this legislation, effectively double the amount of JEA eligible employees up to, you can see, the 32.6%. And why JEA has taken the position to oppose this legislation, because as you can imagine, and as we recently distributed internally in our white paper position, the positions that would be most affected by that could have catastrophic effects if those individuals chose to take advantage of that retirement offering and immediately depart the company. Our systems are built on long-term attrition and mitigation, not cliff-type events that this type of situation could create for us. Next slide, Lena. Here's a snapshot of our diversity. In the left-hand graphic, this compares JEA's diversity demographics to the utility workforce as well as all industries. And you can see that in the blue bar, that we pretty closely align in most of those categories. We are still challenged and are still, and we'll talk about that a little bit further on in our hiring processes, continuing to work to improve, to be more representative of our county and of our metropolitan area, to be an employer that is really reflective of the employee or of the community that we serve. Okay, next slide, Linda. This is a graphic created about a decade ago to help us illustrate, and when we talk about, we hear constantly that JEA has a technical workforce. This is another way that we've tried to illustrate it to really show the point that the JEA truly does have a technical workforce. When you see this and consider that 72% of the positions currently in the JEA regular workforce require either a 4-year college degree or completion of a 4-year state-certified apprenticeship program just to compete for the jobs, you can see why this makes us unique, especially when we're often compared to the city of Jacksonville and to other city agencies. Okay, next slide, please. So this is really a representative illustration of the process internally we use as an HR team to sustain this incredibly valuable and highly developed workforce. We start with the talent acquisition efforts. This keeps the general talent pool inflowing, responding to the attrition that's taking place. Once we have the employees on board, we immediately begin the employee development process that is to prepare and continuously grow our employees. Then we move into the succession planning cycle, which is where we identify individuals and specific knowledge and start the knowledge transfer processes well in advance of when we know we have critical individuals leaving the organization. And then behind that, we continually conduct attrition risk assessments to identify key positions that if we lost could have immediate and direct impacts to our operations. Next slide, please. As far as the hiring practices, these are the focuses of our talent acquisition team. It's stated in the 3 boxes. We continue, as I mentioned earlier, to pursue having diversity in our organization representative of the community we serve. But at the same time, we still need to have the best and the brightest and the most qualified candidates coming into the organization. What we have done and continue to do a tremendous job with our community partners to help us develop the inroads that we need and to help prepare incoming talent that they'll have the skill sets to be able to effectively compete for the jobs here at JEA. Okay, next slide, please. Once we have the talent on board, JEA uses performance management tools to assess and identify the skill gaps for employees and then provides learning and development opportunities to close those gaps. And in addition, these development offerings are provided throughout the employee's career to help them prepare for internal promotion. Next slide, please. The succession planning, we do this in order to keep a steady stream of next generation talent across the organization. JEA, we use both top-down high potential talent identification as well as employee career mapping, looking for matches, where making sure that where the organization needs and seeking where the employees want to go come together, and that we're able to take advantage of those matches. Next slide, please. Another process that we, as I mentioned earlier, we continually do is we're assessing our workforce, looking for roles and individuals that in the event that these individuals depart, we could have immediate and major consequences to our organization. So essentially, we use this type of model, looking at probability and severity, to assess those positions. And you will see here in a minute that we really approach that in two categories of skill groups, one being our leadership and professionals, the other being our strategic job families. So let's go to the next slide, please. This is a snapshot on the left-hand side, our current position as we've identified for fiscal year 21, 120 high-risk positions in both our leadership and our professionals that we're working on to create development plans for based on how severe we think the risk is. You can see the red, yellow, green. Those are considerations that we take into the development cycle. Just to give you an example, over on the right is how we have been effective at doing these year over year. You see that last year we had 119 individuals identified. 18 of those individuals, those high-risk individuals, actually left. And the good news is that we had successful mitigation and overlap succession plans in place for when those individuals left. Next slide, please. For the strategic jobs, these progression pathways really represent the one on the left is electric, the one on the right is a water pathway. It really maps the progression that our internal employees can go. They begin down at the bottom as apprentices, and these are trainees and are able to grow up through. And what this does is refill the internal means for us to backfill from within. And as it's an opportunity for the employees to grow, at the same time the organization is able to take advantage of the internal talent to fill those progressive needs. Next slide, please. And lastly, as these domino-like progressive promotions occur through the pathways, these vacancies eventually fall back to the apprentice and trainee levels. And in JEA's 5-year plan that we recently developed and are deploying for this year, we'll be reinvesting in 237 new entry-level apprentices and trainees over the next 5 years to match that attrition pipeline and to make sure that these critical strategic jobs that are vital to our organization stay maintained at the levels that they need for the readiness of the organization. So with that, I appreciate your time this morning. Hope this was informative and would be glad to answer any of your questions.
Question. Rob, I have a question. First of all, I congratulate you. This is really a well-done program and an in-depth analysis of workforce planning. What I would like to see is a deeper dive on what we're doing to promote diversity. That's got to be a big job because we're way behind the city's population proportions, and we need to be better. And it's not going to happen easily. We're going to have to work with our partners. We're going to have to develop people that really can be the best and the brightest and still be diverse. And I would encourage you to come back to us at a future meeting with a game plan of how we're going to do that.
I mean, John, I think that's a great point. I think it takes effort, but I think it's something that we've got to strive for.
I agree. And there's a trend, it's just starting, but it's called new collar, not white or blue collar roles, but it's new collar roles. And it's where organizations have recognized that this generation, this next generation, hasn't necessarily exhibited a value of that 4-year college degree. And if 72% of our jobs, and I'm not talking engineering jobs, obviously, you need engineers for engineering jobs, But it may be that y'all can take a look at that 72% that require the four-year degree and see if you can tweak that a little bit and find ways for candidates who don't look like we have looked at historically candidates. We might find some other folks.
I'd also suggest we work with our community college and universities in this effort.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Great report. Next is our board policy review. Steve, too.
Mr. Chairman, this is Paul. May I just jump in for 30 seconds on the HR front? I wanted to at least announce and introduce David Emanuel, who has joined JEA as, again, interim HR executive leader. Angie has now retired, and David comes on with 30-plus experience of HR in a variety of industries, most recently in the energy and power industry, and has worked with a variety of workforces, including labor unions and professional staff. So, David, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from him in the future in future board meetings representing the total HR group. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David?
Steve.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Moving to the, I know this is a document that y'all see each month. It's the schedule of policies and other documents requiring board approval or review. The very first item on page 260 is the single item that we're going to be actually presenting for the first time to the board today is the bylaws of JEA. They are the work of the governance committee. They have updated these bylaws for the board's approval, which Chair DeSalvo will be presenting upcoming governance committee presentation. Next slide, please, Landon. Okay, thank you. The board policy manual obviously has also been getting a lot of consideration both by the governance committee and the board. We're close, I think, to have this first iteration of a finished product, which again, Chairman DeSalvo will be mentioning here momentarily. Once I think the final, key element of it is going to be the city's approval of Article 21 of the charter, which we'll probably get into the board policy manual next month or so. And at that point, I guess this first iteration is done, after which the board policy manual will be available to kind of move through the normal calendar rotation as you see it presented here on either a cyclical or an as-needed basis. And those are the two items I wanted to mention on this schedule, and so that's all I have.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, we'll go into committee reports, and the only committee that is reporting today is the governance committee. General?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, our governance committee charter missioned us to restructure the JEA Board Policy Manual to facilitate comprehension, cross-referencing, and transparency, and to update the JEA bylaws and ensure that the JEA Board Policy Manual and the bylaws are consistent with the City of Jacksonville Charter and the policies and Florida statutes. I'm pleased to report to the board that the Governance Committee has completed this mission. We reorganized and revised the Board Policy Manual policy categories that improve comprehension and referencing. On the governance process category, we included the JEA bylaws, which previously was a separate document, and we fine-tuned board positions and duty descriptions. We also included for the first time a mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives policy, which informs all stakeholders our board's commitment to transparency and maintaining the ethical high ground. On the board management delegation category, we overhauled the CEO core competencies and evaluation criteria to be feasible and clearly understood. With respect to the executive mandates policy category, we eliminated and revised very confusing wording that will enable the CEO and all stakeholders to clearly understand the mandates. And the measures of effectiveness policy category was revised to enable an improved objective methodology of evaluating the utility's performance. We also created for the first time a JEA Board evaluation criteria that will enable we, the board, to see ourselves correctly on an annual basis. Throughout this entire effort, the committee consistently ensured the board policy manual stay nested with the City Council's Article 21 draft. Lastly, the Governance Committee will continue to be vigilant on ensuring this BPM remains adhered to, relevant, and nested with all appropriate charters and policies. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, unless there are any questions, I'd like to make a motion requesting board approval for our final draft JEA Board Policy Manual.
Second.
Is there further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Joe. You did a yeoman's job on that. It's incredible what was accomplished. I think at this point we'll go into other business. Is there any old business? Is there any other new business? How about open discussion? Is there anything on anybody's mind?
Yeah, John, I'd make one suggestion is that we move these board meetings out to other facilities around the community that JEA is involved in. It's a thought that we get out there and see the facilities we have and meet the employees we have.
I think it's a great idea, and what I will tell you is we'll first be COVID aware, and to the extent that we can do that, I'm fully in favor of that. It's a great idea. Anything else?
Chair Baker, this is Steve Tootin again. One item, it's on actually page 578 of the package, is regarding the board's self-assessment survey, if you will. I don't believe y'all have seen that in the Excel version. Obviously, the presentation deck is a PDF. I think the plan, what we were hoping to do, was to actually send an email out after the meeting to all 7 board members providing this same survey in Excel form. It's populated where you can put the 1 through 5 scoring in. There's actually a calculator at the bottom that will give a raw score. It also gives you an opportunity to drop in some free text as necessary. And what we would request, hopefully, presumably with the plan to maybe have the tabulation available for the board's review at the December board meeting, is to, once you complete these surveys individually, to send them, and we'll have instructions in this email going out, to make it as independent and objective as possible, to send those surveys back to Lee Montanez, who is the manager of internal audit, and he will have his contact information, both email and phone number, if you have any questions for him. And we'll go ahead and get that out shortly after the meeting. And certainly don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions, but also Lee is fully apprised of to field any questions if necessary. Comments or questions?
Joe, have you reviewed that?
I'm going to, and Steve, thanks. I completely forgot about that. So, yeah, basically, we've all seen what the board evaluation criteria is in the appendix, and so what Steve and his team have done is it's a hyperlinked survey that when we fill it out, then it'll be compiled, and then Lee Montanez will be the point of contact from audit services. But what I would recommend is, so we're supposed to do this as a board on an annual basis. And considering we haven't, we're into our 6th month or whatever for this, what I recommend, Mr. Chairman, maybe is holding off on doing the survey until we hit that 1-year mark, and then take it from there. Now, we can get training on it, and I think it's a good idea to get this out to the board members so they can see how it looks, but I don't necessarily think, unless we can, that we need to submit an evaluation in December.
Okay. Jody, do you have any problem with that?
No, I think that's a fine process.
I think having 6 months to work with the new CEO also makes it more valuable.
Right.
Agreed.
Too, as well.
Yeah.
If we had to do it to dot the I, we could do it, but if we don't, I think you're right on target.
Okay.
I would agree.
Great.
Okay. I have no report, and if there's nothing further to come before the board, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.